Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Climbing Sycamores podcast, where we look at today's topics to get a better view of Christianity. I'm Annie Beege, and I'm joined by my friends Ben Sadler and Matt Harbach.
Special day for our Climbing Sycamores podcast. We have my friend here, Phil Merten, and I think I call you friend, right? Every time you treat me, you always smile every time I see you.
Glad to be your friend, sure.
About 20 years ago, I remember I was in seminary, and I had a job working on the south side of Milwaukee, working with people from different backgrounds, and Phil started a 12-step group there called Grace Oasis, and I came along, and it was my first time doing anything like that. And it was amazing how you ran that group and how I just felt like fit right in. You know, I have my own set of, insecurities or issues or whatever. And it was amazing how you just connect with the different people. So that was my first time meeting you and working with you. And then over the years, we kind of run into at the same conferences a lot of times.
Sure.
I've been doing some work for Freedom for the Captives on preventing abuse. And you seem to always be presenting too, so I appreciate that. So I'm really glad that you're willing to do an interview today. We have Matt and Annie and Phil here, and doing this for a dual purpose. I have a class on addictions, and we're supposed to interview an expert, and you're our expert.
Just using us to get your homework
That's right.
done.
I'm using you to get my homework done, so I appreciate that. Yeah. So with that introduction, Phil, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got in the work you're doing, what's the work that you do, and
Well, I'm a chaplain with institutional ministries, and that's just what the name says. We work at institutions, and our focus it's kind of tilted. Majority is toward corrections institutions, so I do some stuff at a couple of prisons, at a county jail, and we're hitting. I forget how many corrections institutions my staff and volunteers are going to right now, and we do hospital work and other places, nursing homes, some hospice.
how'd you get into the work? How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it since 1989. I was parish pastor before that, and I'd done some when I was going to the seminary. I was kind of like what you're doing. I got involved in some of the work that institutional ministries is doing. We're doing Bible studies at it was basically juvenile detention, and I got in on that. My roommate was going. He said, "Come and join me in this," and I did. And anyway, we got to know the ministry through that, and then. After a few years in parish ministry, I got the call to this and said, yes, sir, please, sir. I'd always, this just really appealed to me, that wonderful work, going in and places where people just didn't have to convince them that you got a problem. They don't have a problem. It's like, let me tell you about Jesus. Please tell me more. That was kind of fun. And the addiction recovery part of it, that started before I got into institutional ministries. It wasn't too long into parish ministry that it started to dawn on me that almost every case where people were coming for counseling help, any kind of pastoral help, there was drugs and alcohol involved. And I didn't know anything about that. They didn't teach us much of anything at the SEM at that time about it. My acquaintance with drugs and alcohol had been brief and horrible. Got arrested in high school when my buddy and I scored some hashish and got his locker inspection, and we were arrested. And that was my drug career right there. Mm-hmm. So now, years later, I'm having all these people say that alcohol, drugs are involved, and all the conventional answers that I had just wasn't enough.
Pray harder.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Read your Bible more.
And I realized I got to get some education on this. So I didn't get anything formal. I got what I could here and there. Go to open meetings. I'd go any outfit was offering classes, I'd go to those, picked up whatever I could. So finally got some kind of handle on this crazy thing called addiction. Oh, it's, it isn't just, just got to pray more, like you're saying. That it's not enough. And then when got into institutional ministries, there, 70 to 90% of people that are doing a bit in prison, there's drugs or alcohol involved in that, and often they're got an addiction problem themselves. And boy, I got right away almost. I got pushed off the end of the dock with that. I was doing a Sunday service at one of the institutions. It wasn't. This is a mental health facility, and a woman came up to me and afterward and said, "I'm here doing an inpatient treatment for my addiction, and I'm on my 5th step. And would you hear my 5th step?" And I said, "Sure, I'd like to do that." We set up a time. I made an appointment. We showed up later that week, heard her 5th step. On the way out, this big, imposing nurse stopped me and said, "Who are you?" And I said, my name's Phil Merten. And she said, I explained a little bit about being a chaplain here, and she said, "You want to do a spirituality group?" I said, "What's a spirituality group?" She says, "We talk about spiritual stuff." And I said, "Okay." And they set it up so that I had this group where I...
And you're a parish pastor at this time?
No, by this time I was in institutional ministries.
Okay, you're already... Okay.
Yeah. But I became the de facto chaplain for Milwaukee County's inpatient program, and it kind of expanded from there. People would get done with their treatment program, and what do we do then? Just I'll pray for you. Try to find a church. Can we keep on supporting them somehow? So that's where Grace Oasis started, kind of a landing place for people who are getting out of institutions, still looking for Christian help with their problem. So got that going at my church. I've encouraged other churches to get it going, and then I've taken the show on the road to different prisons and jails. We've got this going. I forget how many we were doing this at.
And Grace always, that's taking the 12 steps and
right. Yeah,
I've always with Bible devotions and
I've always kind of used the 12 steps as the foundation for this, and taken because it's basically drawn from the Bible to begin with. You look at the stuff in the if you look over 12-step recovery, it really, I don't think it could work if you're not talking about the God of grace.
Right.
Grace is just so foundational in it, even though it doesn't talk about Jesus. It just says God as we understood him. But it's so clear there, so it doesn't take anything to just say, well, here's what we're talking about when we talk about grace.
I'm reading a book right now. It's a little older, but John Zoll wrote a book, Grace and Addiction, and he's kind of showing how, the church could learn a lot from the 12 steps, and the 12 steps could learn a lot from the church. And so how can we bring them both together? So it's resonating a lot with the work that you were doing. And so you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
What's the most meaningful aspect of the work that you do and how you keep doing it?
Boy, seeing what happens when people have that experience that, well, this grace thing is real. That, my wife put it this way. She's a drug and alcohol counselor, and one time she was working with a guy a heroin addict, who was just feeling like he was the scum of the earth. He couldn't stay clean. His family was rejecting him, and let's see, she told him at one point, she stopped and said, do you know that you are God's masterpiece, that he is looking at you and is so proud of you, so glad to have you? And he said that changed everything. He was thinking, like so many people, that you have to, maybe someday, if I climb out of this hole that I've dug for myself.
You got sober first.
Yeah, do something to get religion, I don't know, but to say right now, God says, I am so glad to be your father. I see that so often. That's basis of what I do, telling people. One of the Phil Merten rule number 7 for sane living is being right with God is not your goal. Being right with God is your starting point. You got to be able to tell anybody that. Right now, God says, "I'm glad to have you. I want to work with you. You're forgiven. You're loved."
You have the rules? What are the rules? You're bearing the lead here. 7 rules?
Oh, gosh, I got to dig all those up right now. Well, let me think about that.
Okay, let's think about it. If they come out, if they come out
Okay.
as we go here. And you guys jump in, too, if you have any additional questions. So what's the most challenging part of the work that you do?
When people haven't yet reached that point where it's like, this isn't working for me and I need God, and they're still, in AA, they talk about researching. People are still researching. Maybe I can make this work. Maybe I need a little God every now and then, but I can go back and find the right balance between using and religion or whatever it is. People, they want to. It's true for everybody. We all want to be in charge. We all want to be in control. And psychoactive chemicals, that's control. I feel bad, but if I ingest the right chemicals, I don't feel so bad. I'm in control of my feelings. So to be in a program where it's like I'm surrendering control. I'm saying, God, you're in charge, or I'm telling people my deepest, darkest secrets, where I'm calling up people when I feel like using instead of trying to get it under control myself. That's a big jump. So people would, so often they want to, no, let's see if we can just keep it to a minimum. And of course that never works.
Yeah. You can't halfway your faith, and you can't halfway doing sobriety.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so meeting them in that spot, and how do you help? Now, is there anything you can do when a person's in that spot?
Whew, boy, yeah. Just continuing to let them know you can come to me anytime. If you relapse, I'll still be talking to you. I'm not going to reject you. I've had people. I'm thinking of one of my friends in particular. She's in heaven now, but for many, and she died sober. But for many years, just couldn't string together 5 sober days. It was always she'd try, and then something would set her off, and she'd be drinking again. That went on for years and years, and I kept trying to be there for her every time she slipped, and eventually, I think that my showing care for her, my keep on showing her Jesus care, the other Christians in her life showing her care, it finally broke through, and she was able to start following the program.
Yeah. We've talked about that quite a bit here, about how do you help somebody that you care about, but they continue to in this bad behavior, and you want to be there for them, but what is that kind of? So how do you look at yourself when you're thinking, this isn't on there, I'm going to just get off script for a second here, but how do you help a person when they're in that going back and forth, they don't really want to take responsibility, don't want to go on that road, or do you have another?
That was my question too. Like, do you have to let them bottom out or hit rock bottom?
Well, what is rock bottom? How do you define it? It's
relative.
Very. Like this one friend I was telling you about, every time she hit rock bottom, she'd get out the drilling equipment. This ain't anywhere near deep enough. And then I've got others. One guy I know, he was holding down a job. His marriage was staying together. He was, for all intents and purposes, you could say, I don't have a problem. Sure, I'm getting high and constantly, but it's working.
My life seems manageable.
He said what his rock bottom was his little boy. God will do that. He'll play dirty tricks on you. I mean, he'll even stoop to using your kids against you. And he did with his little, I think, 2 or 3 year old son. The way he described it, the little boy was playing with his toys, and all of a sudden he'd pick it up and he'd put it in his mouth and go like a joint. And ad for beer would come on TV. He'd point and say, "Daddy's beer." And this guy looked at that and said, "What am I doing to my child?" Mm-hmm. That was his rock bottom right there. He got into treatment. He's a drug and alcohol counselor now, but he was holding down a job. His marriage is staying together. He's making his house payments, but he'd hit his rock bottom there. So what does rock bottom even mean?
Right. And the drug can be such a strong pull that there's not a reasonable rock bottom, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think another thing that we want to talk about too is, so you have these relationships with these people that sometimes they're in that halfway between. Some people are just not ready to make that jump and work the program. How is your faith kind of informed and kept you going and informed the work that you do, and how do you look at it through an eyes of faith?
One of the things that I always encourage people to do is, I'm going to back up for a minute here. There's the 12-step program that alcoholics and addicts go through. It's the exact same program that they use in Al-Anon. This is the family members.
Yeah.
And reason I'm bringing that up is what do you do when there's people you care about who are stuck in their addiction and they're not making any progress, and it's just, what am I supposed to do? And the temptation there is control. I have to, if I say it the right way, if I hide their booze, if I leave enough pamphlets around the house, if I drag them to church or whatever, I can get this under control. And to surrender that control and say, "God, they're in your hands. My life is out of control. It's not my alcohol; it's somebody else's alcohol, but my life is out of control." And to be able to trust it to God. And I always have to do that with this. Okay, God, I've given him my best shot, but ultimately, I didn't die for these people. You did. So you got to do something, and then see what he's doing. Try to work with his program.
So everybody's on the same program.
Everybody is on the same program. Exactly. Yeah.
That's great.
That's one of the real blessings, I believe, of working with addicts. Recognizing that what they're going through, what they have to do to get into a sane, sober life, that it's the same stuff I got to do. Mm-hmm. Same stuff anybody has to do. You got to get recognized. I got a problem that I can't control. I've got to turn it over to God. I've got to get honest with other people. All those things that a person has to do to stay sober, even a person without chemical dependency, we got to do the same thing, or we're in trouble.
Do you think? Like you mentioned, I do this work, and people know they have a problem. It's very visible. I'm in jail. I have a problem.
Yeah,
and maybe not all people will still admit that. When you work with people outside of institutions, do they get? How hard is that to convince people we all need to work this program?
Yeah. How do you? To convince people, that's one of those things where recognizing my powerlessness. I can't
Right.
convince nobody on nothing.
Right.
And that's one of the things that being in institutional ministries has taught me. I kind of have it easy in that I don't have to really preach much law, because state of Wisconsin has preached law. The heroin and cocaine, they preach a great law sermon. Way better than I ever could. I'm here with the good stuff.
Yeah.
So when people aren't at that point, there's it's pretty limited what I can do. I can keep loving them. That's something that heroin can't give you. God can give you love. I can give you love. Psychoactive chemical ain't gonna love you. It's gonna do just the opposite.
I've been reading a couple different things on that, and I heard we actually talked about this a couple weeks ago, or I think our last podcast, that we watched a video and that this guy was saying the opposite of addiction is connection, and this idea, like people are looking for this connection, and the drug is not going to give it to them,
right.
But that love and connection is the thing that they're missing. and it's a huge part of recovery. I wonder if that's one of the reasons that you've been able to continue in this, had such a long career, really serving in institutions, that you don't take that control onto yourself. We talk a lot about that here too, like boundaries, like,
Yeah.
it's not my job to control you. And if you do have that idea that I have to convince or control, you're going to take on all that vicarious trauma or vicarious feelings. And would you attribute like how long you've been able to do this work to how you look at it now and being on the program yourself?
Definitely. In Al-Anon, one of their slogans is detachment with love. I'm going to love you. I'm not going to allow myself to get sucked into your insanity. I will love you, and I'll keep, I'm not going to keep distance, but I will say you're you and I'm me. And if I try to take over somebody's problems, I'm going to get sucked into their problems. Mm-hmm. I heard one pastor once, never forget, he said, people's problems, that's their gift from God. Don't take their gift away.
They need to hear, they need to feel it. And
you got to work through it. I'll be glad to be there for you and be whatever help I can, but I got to watch myself.
So what would that look like practically? What would it look like overstepping, taking on someone's problems, or detaching with love? What would that look like? Do you have a story or an idea of what that? One
thing that I've seen this happen over and over and over again. I'll get a phone call from a parent, usually, and it's usually a mother, saying my son has this addiction problem. He's been arrested. He's got some horrible thing has brought it to a crisis, and I got to help him. What can we do for him? And heart goes out to him. Of course, it's my little pink baby, and look at this horrible thing that's come into his life. And we'll talk, but ultimately I will bring around to. I'm glad we're talking, but how come your son isn't talking to me? How come it's you? And he's just under so much pressure, and I'm just trying to do some stuff for him. It's like, there's the problem right there.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Right. And I always tell him, have your son call me. I'll give you some pointers, and I'll punch your Al-Anon. But you can't take over your child's problem. And boy, the Al-Anon type of addiction it hits a person so hard that, again, thinking of these poor, wonderful, loving mothers that hear that their son is in the house, he's using, and he's violating all the rules, and he's not getting a job, and he's not getting recovery, and so why is he still living with you? Mm-hmm. Well, where's he going to go? What's he going to do if he's not living with me? If your son has an ongoing addiction, if he knows where to get his dope, how to get the money for the dope, he's a very resourceful person.
He'll figure it out.
He's not going to walk out your door and fall down on the sidewalk and die right there like you think he will. He's going to find a way. Quit trying to throw mattresses in front of him so he's never skinning his knees. He needs to skin his knees.
Mm-hmm. So that would be an example. That's what it looks like. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to kind of really key on is, this addiction piece. And so you mentioned it already a little bit, but so what do you know now after doing this work for this long about addictions that you didn't know when you started, and maybe how your views changed on addictions since the beginning?
One of the things that has really struck me is I've did manage to squeeze in some courses on psychopharmacology.
Okay.
Which I thought was really eye-opening. There's this huge, of course, emotional, social, spiritual, those elements of addiction. But you can't afford to lose sight of the purely physical part of addiction. One course I took, I remember the instructor saying that addiction changes you at a molecular level. Mm-hmm. And as we've looked at that, this is all audio. I can't show you the visuals, but to see what happens when addiction alters the way that neurons connect with each other, how the chemicals flow from one synapse to the other, and how that radically alters the way a person reacts to their surroundings. Simply, okay, we all got the pleasure centers in our brains, the reward centers. There's different serotonin and dopamine, all that tickle those reward centers, etc. We've got these natural drugs full of. God created us that way. Mm-hmm. You do the work, you get the reward. You exercise, you get the runner's high. You ask the girl out, you feel wonderful. It's Christmas Day, you feel all jazzed. That's something God built into us. If you do go through the process,
mm-hmm. you get the reward.
Get the reward, and a little bit of happy juice goes out, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But these psychoactive chemicals mimic the natural happy juice that God brought into us, and so once that bell gets rung, how do you unring it? That I know how to get that feeling back, and I don't have to go through the process. Mm-hmm. I've got a chemical that'll just bypass all of that, and I'll get that going again. That'll be, and like I said, how do you unring that bell? And here's where it's just no way I could get into all that. Not that I'm an expert in this, but the ways that it alters the way your neurons process things. I'm getting too much serotonin now, too much dopamine now, so we got to cut back, and it gets harder and harder to get happy off of the stuff that normally make you happy. I'm holding a newborn baby in my arms. Yeah. It's Christmas Day, so what? But if I get high, well, that'll do. But even that, the amount of happiness that comes from that gets more and more and more reduced. Yeah, the tolerance builds up.
A couple of years ago, I read a book from Judith Edith. I forget her last name. The book was called Never Enough. Yeah. And have you read that one? I don't know. But she was an addict, is an addict, and she then went into neuroscience because she wanted to learn how it worked, and she just has all these different charts and graphs what it looks like. Your first high, and then your body responding, like over responding. All right, yes. we need to get it back to homeostasis. So now we're going to make you really depressed. So now you have to take the drug to just feel normal again. And now you're taking this drug just to not vomit, to not feel horrible.
Not trying to feel great. I'm trying to feel normal.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so then you just keep on going. So that was something you've learned over the years. So how does that affect how you help people? And now you're helping them spiritually, but how does that factor in as you're caring for somebody? Now that you have that knowledge, what does that change when you're serving them as a chaplain?
Oh boy, to really be understanding that it's not. Don't expect overnight everything is better. A lot does get better, and it does get better quickly. And, God built us so that our bodies, shift back into normal ways of synapses connecting again. But, in the meanwhile, to keep with a person as they're trying to negotiate this new world of sobriety, especially be patient during the initial weeks, months, sometimes years where, man, sobriety sucks. In a lot of ways it does. But hang in there. It's an AA slogan. It gets better.
Yeah,
it does. But just to hold on. One friend of mine, he said for the first, it was over a year. He said, I was sober. I was going to my meetings. It felt awful. Mm-hmm. And then he said one day he noticed, it's like, I don't have that awful feeling anymore. This is starting to be okay. Way he put it was the physical allergy remains, but the mental obsession has lifted. Finally,
took a year.
Yeah, it took a year. He wasn't thinking about, oh man, if I could drink, I could make this go away, but I'm not going to drink. But it got better.
Wow. So what are some things that are like some of the most, you think, significant misunderstandings that people have about addicts or people who struggle with addiction? The general population, what are some misconceptions or misunderstandings they have?
Boy, I think for me the biggest is that they're so different from me. Addiction is just such a foreign world to me. If I get people understanding that their world is your world, it's my world. We all have our different things that take over our lives, and illegitimate sources for getting our reward centers tickled, but we've all got them. And to understand that processes, we all got to go through the process of admitting it, getting honest, turning it over to God, accepting His help, seeking help from the people He sends. It's all the same for all of us, and quit thinking it's other people. That's one of the biggies. And boy, that would make such a difference in the way churches do ministry. Instead of putting on our best Sunday clothes, I don't mean literal Sunday clothes, but I got my act together. The messed up people are all out there. If we could get honest that we're bunch of messed up people right here, right now. I'm struggling right now. And boy, if you're struggling too, come on, let's get together. That's the biggest frustration I have, that when people don't get that. I mean, I see it changing. People are since I got started in this ministry, I think there's been a lot more understanding and openness about that. But it's still can be frustrating.
The thing that for me is so interesting about the 12 steps is how spiritual it is. As you mentioned, that I'm walking through these steps of that acknowledge I'm powerless. I have to turn this over to God, and then that I need to be honest about my weaknesses, and then I need to make a list of all the people I've harmed, and then do my best to make amends unless it would hurt them. And then be willing to do that, and then to hand my life completely over to the will of God. Like, these are all spiritual steps that we would call confession, repentance, and reconciliation, and that this is going to solve my drinking problem. Well, it just shows that this chemical that is because I have a spiritual and an emotional problem that I need to get the root of, and then it's not just so. There is like you said, this neurochemical imbalance, and my dopamine receptors and everything's all off, right? But it's also at the heart of it. If I walk down these spiritual steps, it's also going to respond to this physical issue.
Absolutely.
All right, that will do it for us today. That'll be part 1, and we'll come back next week with the rest of this conversation.
If you'd like to get a hold of us here at the Climbing Sycamores podcast, feel free to email bsadler@victoryofthelamb.com. bsadler@victoryofthelamb.com. If you like today's intro music, it's been brought to you by Andrew Lynch's song, My Name. Hello.